it's Dr. Michele Ross. I'm the CEO of Infused Partners, and I am so excited. Thank you, Dro TV, for having me on. I can't wait to talk about my first time.
Welcome to My First Time, the show about your first time getting high on marijuana. I'm your host, Mike Freeman with Dro TV. Today, I'd like to welcome our guest, Dr. Michele Ross. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on Dro TV. You can find more of the good doctor, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Most active on Instagram, but we'll have all the links down below. So go follow her at your leisure and your favorite place. Michele, thanks again. Please tell everybody where you're located and a little bit about what you've got going on in the cannabis world.
Sure. So I am now based in Las Vegas. I've been everywhere from Denver to Los Angeles, Boston, New Jersey, but Vegas is home now. I'm CEO of Infused Partners, and I've been doing cannabis consulting, education, research, and advocacy for the last, over a decade now, probably 12, 13 years. I'm also very active in kratom advocacy, as well as psilocybin and other entheogens too. So really been on the forefront of helping integrate all these plant medicines that were so stigmatized for so long into mainstream medicine. And, you know, even after over a decade in this industry, it's still a struggle sometimes to get the people that are so hung up on the stigma to really accept this plant.
It's what we do every day, right? Try to destigmatize and get more people aware and to shed this whole veil of, oh my God, it's illegal and it's bad for you and bunch of nonsense. So we appreciate people like yourself being out there and doing all that you do. 10 plus years, that's pretty awesome. Definitely want to get more into all the things that you have going on, and you do have quite a lot, Michele. But the show is my first time. So please, can you tell us about the first time you got high?
Well, I'm actually a neuroscientist. And so I worked for the government for many years. So I wasn't actually allowed to consume cannabis because if you study drugs and you get drugs in the mail to give to rats and things like that, you can't actually be positive for anything. So I abstained for most of my adult life until I quit the academic research world. But there was like one or two times in college where I had tried some cannabis, but it was always when I was drunk and I was like have some brick weed joint. Like after you've had way too many drinks, you're like, I just passed out. I didn't enjoy any cannabis. So like, that's not my first time. Like, that's not the story here. I'm actually not a super fan of smoking cannabis. For me, I use it more medicinally for pain because I have severe pain as a fibromyalgia patient and I have like 10 other chronic illnesses. So for me, it's much more medical. I don't really get a lot of euphoria out of it like some people do. I get jealous because I've been consulting patients forever and I'm like, oh, it must be nice. Like some people have different, preferences. Some people really like alcohol. Some people like cannabis. Some people like MDMA. Like everyone has a different thing, right?
Sure.
Cannabis is not my recreational choice, but my first cannabis story I really want to share is the first time I had an edible, because my jam is actually edible cannabis.
Okay.
So it's interesting too. And we can get into the science about that too, because there are different cannabinoids based on whether you smoke it or whether you eat it. And it's sort of interesting that some people love edibles, some people hate them. I love them. And it's very, very crazy that the first time I had an edible, of course, it was one of those times where I didn't know I was eating an edible. That's a lot of people's first times, I think, actually. Like, did you know that cookie was a special cookie? Well, in my case, that was the actual story. So I ended up, just to preface this story, since I didn't get a big intro or anything, I was the first scientist on reality television. I did Big Brother like about 13 years ago. And so for a while I lived in Hollywood and I was doing like a lot of reality TV charity events and things like that, working on science TV shows and things like that. I ended up going to Disneyland with a bunch of reality TV people that are pretty famous. And I was seeing one of these people who was married at the time, so we can't name him. So, uh, but anyways, his friend gives me this big cookie, and I was like so excited because I'm hungry, and like all the food at Disneyland is like $80, and I eat it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, dude, you ate the whole thing. You're supposed to share that. I was like, it's an effing cookie. Like, I'm not going to share this cookie. We can go buy another Mickey Mouse cookie or something like that, you know? He's like, no, that's a weed cookie. And I was like, what do you mean it's a weed cookie? I was like, I don't do weed. And he's like, what do you mean? He smokes all the time. Like, what do you mean? You don't, like, I thought you would, guys, that's what you do together. And I was like, oh no. And I really didn't know what to expect or anything, because like my previous experience was like smoke, go to sleep, because I was drinking and partying. And so here was in Disneyland, and it was like sort of a scary experience. But then literally I went on Space Mountain right around when it started kicking in, and like I was in the roller coaster. And I don't know if you're familiar with Disneyland, but it's like there's like all these stars and everything. And so you're in this indoor roller coaster where it looks like you're like out in outer space. And I was like, I'm floating. And it was just like, oh my God. I was like, I don't think this ride really feels like this. Like, I thought it was like the best, like, I know 4 hours of my life. And they're like, dude, that's like a 2-minute ride. Like, I was just like so happy. And all I wanted to do was go on that ride over and over again. And, you know, they wanted to do other things. But I did have some mishaps. Like, I got really paranoid, and like I went under a bench for a while, and like they needed to find me. Like, I was really silly. So it can be overwhelming. You imagine like your first time being high, being like at a theme park. And I'm a grown up too. Like, I'm not a kid, so it's like awkward when you're like, I should have my shit together, but I don't.
Right.
You know, I was like, goodness, probably like 27, 28 at the time. Definitely a late bloomer with cannabis, because again, I was working in academia up until that point. So, you know, my first time was a little crazy, but then it got me thinking, hey, I like edibles. And it actually was interesting. When I didn't have all the diseases that I have now, like diagnosed back then. But when I started using cannabis more medicinally and everything, I have been such a big advocate for edibles, not only because it's so helpful medicinally, but you know, there's all these other things that you can do with cannabis edibles, you know, from sex to, you know, meditation and yoga and exercise and things like that. And that's the fun space I like to play in. It's very similar to like the psychedelic experience, you know, with psilocybin, magic mushrooms and things like that, that elevated experience. What I get from edibles is what I guess other people get from smoking. I don't get that. I literally just feel more pain. I'm like super focused on pain. So for me, that moment where I just realized like there was just something that literally just created pure bliss in my brain, you know, it was just beautiful. And it's sort of funny because I had actually studied cannabis as a researcher. I published on it back in 2006. You know, I worked for NIDA and the government studying drugs and trying to, make more reasons why drugs should be illegal, basically, and show how harmful they are and things like that. But, to me, I had read about cannabis. I had read about its potential and researched its potential to grow new brain cells or promote neurogenesis, right? And I heard about some of the health benefits, but I had been so indoctrinated, going to school in Texas and some of these other states where cannabis is illegal, and the feds, are telling researchers, here's, millions of dollars to study how bad cannabis is. I still really didn't feel safe, with it up until that point. And then I felt like, okay, this can't be all bad. It was such a more positive experience for me than getting drunk and hungover. And to me, it's still like that magical experience. It's like, there's some moments in life you'll always remember. And just for me, like sitting back and just looking at the stars and the roller coaster, it's just like, I wish I could go back to that moment and like redo that. You never get that same feeling, that novelty of that ever again. But that was an amazing and enjoyable experience. And I've had so many more enjoyable experiences, just different ones, but it's just, it's like your first time is your first time. So that's my first time on edibles.
Sure. Do you remember how much was in the cookie? Did he know?
He said he put a lot in and he didn't know. So I mean, this is back in the day,
Sure.
goodness. This is over 10 years ago. So it's
So it was
like
probably pretty
I have
strong.
some weed, I put some cookies in, it was probably
How long did the effects last? Was it the whole time you were there at the Disneyland?
yeah, yeah. I had to have an adult with me at all times.
Nice.
Yeah, which is funny because I actually have a pretty low tolerance for cannabis. Usually I go to sleep, but I guess it's like what I've learned about myself is that if I'm bored, I go to sleep. But if I'm doing something, like if I'm hiking or I'm watching a movie, if like my brain's stimulated in some way, I don't go to sleep. And so I think I just really lucked out. Like I think if that same scenario would happen where I was just like on somebody's couch and somebody had given me that cookie, I just would have like fallen asleep like in half an hour later or something like that. I wouldn't have been like, oh my goodness, Disneyland is the best place on earth,
Right.
And it's funny because now I don't really want to go to theme parks ever without being high. It sort of ruined it for me. I'm just like, oh God, too many people in lines. This is stressful. Give me an edible now. So but I think it's important to be around people that know what they're doing. I was with about 3 people that had been consuming cannabis for at least 10 to if not 20 years. So
Okay.
very experienced consumers. They were also like, not jerks. So they weren't like, oh, you're high, like, and let me, fend for myself. They did take care of me. So that was nice. So I think, it's so important to have those to be able to experiment, to try new things. But I do try to caution people. I'm like, don't try to trick your friends into taking edibles. He didn't trick me, but like, yeah, try to label your goodies when you have them. I'm
Yeah. I
not sure if I
mean,
would have willingly done that, that
if
first
you're
one,
someone
but
that
yeah.
eats the whole cookie, tell them that maybe just take a bite or.
Yeah. No, they have that. Like when you go to the dispensary now, like they have those like little recommended doses, and
Sure.
especially in Colorado and like California, they'll be like, oh, you should only take 10 milligrams at a time, maybe even less if you're a newbie, and of course, California, before they instituted recreational cannabis or adult use cannabis. It's funny because the medicinal market would be like 100 milligrams as a starter dose because Californians were, eating 3,000 milligram edibles and were like, oh, I can go about my day because they had such a high tolerance from using cannabis all the
Sure.
time. So it's funny. I'm married into the cannabis industry. My husband had grown cannabis in Oregon and worked in the industry for a long time. So I knew people that was just like, geez, you could smoke anyone under the table, like anyone, people have these tremendously high tolerances. It was insane. And so I was just like, I don't understand. And then I met everyone in California. It was like the same. And I'm like, I'm good with 10, like I'm good. My starter dose is like, I'm a cheap date. I'm like, here you go. You don't have to spend like $100 to chill on in Netflix for the night. So
Awesome. So you're a fibromyalgia coach. You suffer from fibromyalgia as well. One of my best friends has fibromyalgia. He medicates with cannabis. Can you kind of talk through what it is you do for fibromyalgia patients? And if my friend was interested, I know you have like is it like a free book or something on your site or a class about fibromyalgia?
yeah, so I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in 2016. Although I had a lot of the symptoms for years, it usually takes people about 10 years to get diagnosed. It's a chronic pain syndrome. So basically, you feel muscle, joint, and even nerve pain throughout your whole body, pretty much every single day. So if you're not medicated, you'd be basically like in level 8 or 9 pain on a rate on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, so you're in pretty severe, horrible pain, pretty disabled most of the time. There are some medications that people take, but they don't work for everyone. Just like say antidepressants don't work for everyone with depression, and some of them wear off. Some of them have horrible side effects like serious weight gain or other issues. So a lot of people with fibromyalgia are suffering. Their doctors don't talk to them about other options for pain management like cannabis. And one of the most shocking things is that about 90% of fibromyalgia patients that consume cannabis find some benefit from it. And so it's not like, oh, maybe the first time they smoke, they're instantly found the right strain or the right product and they're set for life. Like that's not how it works. But, once they find the right dosage and the right product, they're going to have some kind of relief, whether that's pain relief, whether that's insomnia relief, fatigue, brain fog. There's so many different facets to this disease. It's very complex. But, for me, when I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, even though I was this cannabis expert and scientist, I had a hard time finding products that would work for me. Like I said, I had this issue where everyone was telling me, you smoke for fibromyalgia, you just smoke weed and the pain goes away. And I'm like, okay, I feel all my pain worse. It's like electrocuting me worse. I feel my back pain worse. Like I'm supposed to feel better, not worse when I smoke. They're like, it's the wrong strain. So here I am smoking thousands of strains at this point, going, that's not it. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the edibles. They work. I take them at night. I go to sleep. The medicine works in my body, while I'm sleeping. So if I'm high while I'm sleeping, it's all good. I wake up, my muscles are good. Everything is working. So it's you have to find what works for you. Some people are just on cannabis. Some people are on cannabis plus, medications. Some people are on medications only because they want to be, or, for some other reason. But my goal really is to provide the education around these different plants so that people can understand what their options are, how to customize, basically different products, use them correctly, for the goal, right? Like using an edible to enjoy sex is different than trying to get to sleep, which is different than trying to use it for pain control, right? There's all these different reasons why you might use a product and when you should. A lot of people get all this misinformation about CBD is the only healing thing. And if I just drink a bottle of CBD a day, all my pain will go away. I'm like, do you know how much it costs? You're going to spend $100. I'm like, that, no, don't do that. What are you doing? But patients from around the world, they work with me through telehealth consultations. So just like this Zoom right here, and we talk through what their medications are, what their supplements, what's worked for them, what hasn't, and we try to find the missing links. And because I'm a neuroscientist, I really call myself a nutritional neuroscientist, because I really believe cannabis is food, cannabis is medicine. A lot of the other herbs and plants I recommend, they're all foods, right? Mushrooms, whether they're medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane or they're magic mushrooms like psilocybin mushrooms, they're food that we ingest. I have a book called Vitamin Weed because, again, cannabis is really a vitamin. It helps nourish our endocannabinoid system. And then most Americans don't have a healthy endocannabinoid system. It's out of balance, just like so many of our other systems, from our hormones to our neurotransmitters, things like that. But it's another system that's sort of broken and worn down. And, whether it's feeding it with CBD, whether it's feeding it with cannabis, whether it's feeding it with other herbs or nutrients, or even, meditation practices or different lifestyle changes that help boost your own endocannabinoids, like anandamide, the bliss molecule. You have these different molecules in your body that are marijuana-like compounds. And it's really my goal to help fine-tune and optimize your endocannabinoid system so it's working again. And there's actually research that shows that the endocannabinoid system is disrupted in fibromyalgia and a lot of other chronic illnesses, including migraine, irritable bowel disease, so many different diseases. My book goes over that. It's, talking about, hey, what are the genetic causes of endocannabinoid deficiency? What are, some of the toxins that can cause this? What are some of the things that are causing this imbalance, and how can you treat it? And so for me, realizing that fibromyalgia had this root cause of endocannabinoid deficiency, it was like, well, I need to give myself cannabis every single day. And that's why I give myself edibles, whether it's cannabis oil, whether it's cannabis chocolate, whether it's a cannabis gummy. From that day on, literally has changed my life because my pain goes down. I really had to depend a lot less on pharmaceuticals than the average fibromyalgia patient. It's been amazing, to tell you the truth. I'm probably, I would say, in the top 1% of people with this disease, because most people are actually disabled, completely not working, hopeless. Some are suicidal. Some do actually commit suicide because the pain is so terrible. And
Wow.
really my goal, I want to help 1 million women with fibromyalgia and other chronic chronic illnesses that are in that same range. There's a bunch of them that, including even long COVID has fibromyalgia-like symptoms with chronic pain and fatigue, to really help them understand how to use these different plant medicine allies by themselves or with traditional medicine, really to heal their bodies and get back to living their life that they had before this diagnosis. Because it's insane to think that it's really just legal blockades that are stopping people from learning about this. It's stopping their doctors from saying, hey, let's have a conversation about this, And every single fibromyalgia doctor, unfortunately, there's not a lot of specialists out there. Like there's only like 3 or 4 nationwide.
Wow.
And they either live in states where cannabis is not legal, or they don't want to deal with it, and they'll make a very vague reference to CBD. And like the worst part is when they have like some sponsorship or some like with some company that's not a good CBD brand whatsoever, and it's just like you're not helping anyone. You don't really actually care, about this. You're just shilling stuff. Whereas for me, because I worked in the advocacy world, I'm like, I have been in your shoes. I want to help you get off these meds, get out of a wheelchair, because I was in a wheelchair. I was completely disabled. I went from being a scientist, who was very productive, to being someone who was in a wheelchair. I had an oxygen tank. I was literally being taken care of by my husband full time. I was lying in bed all day. I was on morphine. I was just like, kill me. Like, this is not, my life's not worth living. And then, obviously things turned around with cannabis and some of these other plant allies. But my story was like, no matter how bleak things are, and it doesn't have to be bleak. It could just be like, you know what? It sucks to be in pain. I want to be out of pain. You can take down my pain 3 levels with cannabis. What's the right ratio? Let's work with it. Let's find out, do you need a CBD and THC vape pen? Do you need to combine kratom with your medication safely? Because guess what? Kratom's another plant ally that no one knows anything about. Your doctors won't discuss that with you because they automatically think you're a drug addict. Just like bringing up cannabis is. They're like, oh, so you want a drug test right now? Like here's the pee, little urine test for you, right? There's so much stigma out there. There's so much confusion right now. And there's a lot of pushback right now in the medical world too, because of all these changing rules, especially like with the abortion rules and things like that. Doctors are being very conservative. They're being more conservative about drug stuff. They're being conservative about opioids. They're even being conservative about CBD stuff. So when everyone thinks, oh, well, CBD and cannabis are being legalized everywhere, that means I can talk to my doctor about it. I'm like, nope, still not, because it's not legal federally. So maybe our president will change things soon, hopefully. But right now, I mean, even if he legalized overnight, our systems are not going to change overnight. Our hospitals are not going to suddenly embrace it. Our doctors are not. Doctors that for 30 years were preaching that it was the devil's lettuce, and you need to go rehab, are not going to be suddenly like, this is the key to treating your illness. And then secondly, they're not going to have the experience. I have experience from going through this journey myself, but also helping, thousands of patients through the nonprofits I built and other businesses I've built, and just, working not only with fibromyalgia patients, I've worked with cancer patients, Alzheimer's patients, so many different patients over the years. I really sort of honed down on more chronic pain, just because I think it's really, unfortunately, something where you can make so much progress in it if you reach the right market. But there's just not a lot of good focused education on that. We see everything from like cannabis for veterans, cannabis for cancer and things like that, cannabis for children, but you're like, women have pain and that's okay. Like, it's just funny. It's just like the medical system sometimes overlooks us. And by the way, too, when I say that, I do focus on women with chronic pain. We do have male patients as well at our clinic. It is called Cynthia Health, by the way, cynthiahealth.com. But right now we are offering a free Cannabis for Fibromyalgia webinar. So it's normally $55. It's a 2-hour webinar where we go over everything cannabis and fibromyalgia, including some of the things that I take specifically. If you're in California, it's super helpful. So.
Awesome. Well, that's all great stuff. I'm definitely going to tell my buddy to go check it out. Do you get into any of the other compounds, HHC, CBG? Can you talk about those?
Yeah, so I try not to talk about the other like synthetics, like you were talking about HHC right now,
So
just because
HHC is synthetic?
I think so.
Okay.
You know what? Don't quote me on that one. But so like CBN, CBG, those are all really, there's so many different cannabinoids out there that are really exciting. Some of them promote neurogenesis, some of them are anti-inflammatory. I think that they all have so many, benefits. We just haven't researched them enough to know like their full
Right.
capacity. Like, for example, when we first learned about CBD, we're like, oh, CBD does this. And then we're like, actually, it's an antagonist at this receptor, and that's how it kills cancer cells. Oh, it actually binds to serotonin receptors, and this is how it's actually reducing anxiety. Oh, wait, and then there's CBDA, which actually has different actions than CBD. And CBDA, by the way, if you don't know, is the raw acidic precursor of CBD. So you have to decarboxylate or heat up CBD to make CBDA to make CBD. So like so much science of
Yeah.
cannabis, which again is why there's like a 400-page book
Wow.
that I wrote. By the way, I wrote this book like years ago and got rated for being a cannabis patient back in like, I don't know, 2012 or 2013.
Because you wrote the book.
police literally, the book is on my computer. There's an entire like police force in my room, and I'm like, they're like, what are you doing, where's the weed? I was like, I didn't have the book yet, but I'm like, I'm writing a book, I'm a scientist, get out of here. Like, wrong house, go next door or something, I don't know. And yeah, it's just been crazy. So it's like I've seen every part of this industry, and I just, again, my heart's in it to just help people, help move the industry in the right place, and help people have medical freedom to make the choices that they deserve to make. I think that if it grows in the ground, it's natural, you should be able to use it, because you don't have any freedom if you don't have your own like bodily autonomy.
Sure. Yeah. There's nothing more free than self-preservation and self-ownership and being responsible for your body, what goes in it, and nobody should be able to tell you what you can or cannot do. I think that's pretty reasonable. I don't think that's something too crazy. So, hey, everybody, I want to quickly mention Food Forest Abundance. Food Forest Abundance is a great way to create your own self-sustaining food forest and naturally occurring ecosystem that's commonly found in nature, but designed specifically for you. Through multiple layers of trees, shrubs, herbs, vines, rhizomes, mushrooms, and perennial vegetables, you can become your own supply chain without the typical maintenance required of a garden. From small spaces to large areas, both urban and suburban, Food Forest Abundance wants us to get back to our roots in nature by engaging with our food production in a meaningful way. For more information, click on the link in the description below and start your journey today. Okay, let's get back to today's episode. Michelle, this was an awesome conversation. I'm sure we could talk for another half an hour, and maybe we will down the road. But please let everybody know the best place that they can follow you.
Sure. So you can find all of my courses, my books. You can look up whether or not you qualify for a consult with me at courses.drmichelleross.com. If you want to check out some of my blog articles, they're at the regular site, drmichelleross.com. And then if you want to check out some of that fibromyalgia content, from the free webinar to the fibromyalgia guide that I have up, you can go to cynthiahealth.com.
Excellent. Well, we thank you very much, and we appreciate you out there fighting a good fight. Okay, before I go, neuroscientist, that has a lot to do with the brain, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming you were a neuroscientist before you figured out cannabis. When did the two collide?
I mean, I don't think I figured out cannabis. I don't think anyone has yet, but
Well, there must have been like an epiphany, an aha moment, like, oh, I have this skill set and this knowledge, and now I know what to do with cannabis.
Okay, so in reality, what happened was, again, I ended up dating somebody who was in the cannabis industry, and he was, working with dispensaries and things like that. And back in the day, before it was very regulated, there wasn't a lot of medical help. So, people were saying, "Hey, I want to use this for seizures or something," but like, I don't know what to take. There wasn't any actual educational content out there. Period. I
Right.
created a nonprofit called the Endocannabinoid Deficiency Foundation, or the ECDF. Later renamed it to Impact Network, but I literally created some of the first blog posts on the internet about cannabis and endometriosis, cannabis and Lyme
Wow.
disease. No joke. A lot of my stuff got translated in 100 different languages, but I was the OG out there, like, hey, what are all the gaps in the cannabis medicine world and how do we fill them? I created the first cannabis and motherhood course, which has gotten me so much fan mail, I mean hate mail, from a lot of mothers and academics, being like, how dare you talk to mothers saying that maybe their kids won't come out as three-horned like toads if the mom uses cannabis. I'm all about harm reduction, right? There's so
Right.
many things that can go wrong. Whether you're a patient using medication, you can die from a medication your doctor prescribed you. You can die from, drinking too much water. There's things that can happen to a mother, from eating too much salt. There's so many different things. So cannabis is just one variable, right? CBD is just one variable. My goal is to really understand, who is this safe for? Who is this not safe for? How do we make it safer? How do we optimize it and make it better for you, work better, so that it's actually the best thing for you? Because I really do think that anything that's natural is better. So, for me, I have been one of the crusaders in this industry. I've been unfortunately been penalized for it, with the police knocking at my door and arresting me and things like that, to try to stop my advocacy and my education work. In the past, I even had somebody take my identity actually in Colorado and take
Wow.
over my name and my former nonprofit, and they're going through a trial right now. Like, people just nonstop just try to stop the work, and it's very weird, but it keeps going on because why? There's still people in jail for this plant. There's still people that are told that this plant doesn't do anything for them. There are people that are committing suicide because they're in that much pain, whether emotional pain or physical pain, and they don't have access or they don't know about this plant. And I think that, my role on this planet was, unfortunately, being handed all these chronic illnesses sucks. But it was the gift. I would have never actually turned my pain into educating all these people, right? Because if you don't have that need, you don't really have that passion and that fire to really change things, to really fight for things, right? When I realized all the pain I had gone through, how hard it was for me as a PhD to, fight the law, fight injustice, get the right dosing, go through all these hoops and everything just to get something that should be really simple as going to your doctor and being like, okay, I'm depressed, give me an antidepressant, right? Like, it shouldn't be this hard for somebody to just access a plant. It should be really like getting a tomato. Go to the store, get a tomato, eat it. Do you like tomatoes? Did it help? Did you get some lycopene? Did it help? Cannabis has so many different, essential ingredients that help feed and nourish our body. And it's just like, it's a food. Just let us have our food. Food is medicine. Let us heal ourselves. And you know what? If you need guidance, talk to people like me to help you heal yourself.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for coming on Dro TV and sharing some of your knowledge. If you're watching this on YouTube, you need to go down there and smash the like button for Dr. Michele. Excellent guest. Leave a comment if you have any questions about fibromyalgia. Maybe you've read some of her material. And also, you need to subscribe to Dro TV on YouTube, because otherwise you'd miss amazing guests like Dr. Michele Ross. So thank you again. We appreciate it very much. That's it for today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, smoke them if you got them. What's up, Dro TV family? You can now stream the audio version of all these episodes on your favorite podcast player. And if you like more episodes like this, check out this playlist we put together over here for you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube. You don't want to miss more great content from Dro TV. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, smoke them if you got them.